Jordan is going to lead this, and I'm going to obviously at times give my input. But the reality is that we are here to hear Jordan's thought process because, as I said in the intro, he's one of the best coaches. He's definitely helped me get a lot better. I know there's a lot of room for improvement, and I'm excited to see him probably tear me a new one with a few of these hands. So I'm going to let you lead.
Oh, you always want me to rip you apart. You always want me to be me.
No. In fairness, Jordan very rarely does rip into me, but sometimes it's just like, yeah, no, that's not a fucking thing. Don't ever do that again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you open eights on the cutoff, which is obviously very standard. You had elected to check back the flop. So what are you thinking in a spot like this? Like, obviously you checked, you didn't bet. So how do you think about whether or not to bet or check?
I feel like this is a spot in general. If think about first thing first, if this was shallower, I'd feel more confident. I'm not used to playing 150 big blinds plus. But I feel like on this board at this stack depth, I don't know how often I want to have small bet sizes. So I should be a little bit more polar. Now, I could be wrong, and that I want to bet like my 8s, 9s, 10s for some protection, and I want to bet some 7x. But as far as checks go, this felt like a more efficient one with the 8 of clubs in my hand in particular, and I can take some heat on some turns. Like if he comes out firing on a 6, if he comes out firing on a 9, and I thought it was nice because I don't think we can bet this flop 100% of the time. So it's nice to have some hands that aren't shit.
Okay, yeah, most of that's good. So you don't bet 100, that's right. You do want to bet often. So this hand still bets more than it checks, but checking it's not bad. And as far as like the efficiency argument goes, there should be a difference between 10s and 8s. So you should be more likely to bet 8s and 10s, for example, right? Because your opponent doesn't really have 8s, 9s, and 10s much himself. And so like if you're going to pick a pair to bet and pick a pair to check, you'd rather check 10s because it gets more protection, and bet 8s, or sorry, gets less protection, and bet 8s because it gets more protection, right? So that's like kind of part one. Here's the sim. We can just kind of take a quick look.
What it's worth, this is like what Jordan's doing now is like pretty much exactly what he does in all of the group sessions that go on during the week. And if you get one-on-one coaching, like this is how like the hands are always broken down. It's not just done for this stream. Like just thought
this is very similar to the work that we would do like ordinarily. Yeah, exactly. So you made that efficiency argument. So I just wanted to highlight 10s and 8s, right? So the relationship between 10s and 8s is that 8s bets more and 10s checks more. The reasons I already stated. And the range is going to bet 75% of the time. So you're going to have a 25% check, which is, reasonable. You're going to check sometimes. In that context, your hand does check sometimes, right? So, and then the club actually does bias you towards betting and not away from it. I think that's because you can handle 2 bets more. Okay. So, which is a little bit more important than being able to because essentially like the way that you were thinking about it is that when you check back the flop, because you have a club, you can kind of handle more heat, or you can handle more turns and make the call. You can make the call anyway with whether you have the club or not, right? Yeah, but if you bet and then get raised, it's going to be really important to have that club, right? So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, yeah. So you check back the flop, which is fine. You could have bet. I would have bet. It's better to bet, but checking's not bad. And you face 2/3. I think you have one answer, so it's like a non-decision. You just call. And we show down, which I think is fine. I think the rest of the hand was good. Go to the next one. So we overcall pre with 9-7 offsuit. I think it's a min raise. Like this is probably fine. We end up checking down this one to the river. And all I really wanted to ask you was, because you checked, which is fine, but I wanted to ask, like, how are you thinking today about bluffing? Because you have to bluff sometimes, right? So I'm just curious, like, how I
definitely feel, I don't know if I do it much in this hand history, but I do feel when spots get checked to the river, it is a spot that I'll try and go after the pots a reasonable amount. I'm not sure so if I'm betting here, like I think the worst hand that I'm going to bet for value 4 ways is going to be a queen. If I'm going to bet a jack, it'd be up for a block, but I don't know if I would bet a jack here a lot, and I don't know if I should bet a jack here a lot. So if I'm going to bet here, I'd probably bet on the bigger side. I think the hands that are likely to hero when it's played like this are more likely to be jack X. I don't think there's going to be too many queens. I don't know if it's great that we block 9s and 7s. I think it means they're likely to have some more ace highs. So that's, I think, a good thing. If I was going to bet here, I would just bet pot though, probably at least.
Okay, so you're betting pretty big when you bet.
Yeah, and then just because I think I'm pretty.
And you don't really have a really great. It doesn't sound like to me anyway. You have a great mechanism for discerning like where you want to bluff.
Not here. No, not really.
Okay, probably want to bluff a 5x.
5x, so we just block the river.
So I don't think this hand is bluff. I just wanted to make sure that you had a way of thinking about how to bluff in this spot. And Like this hand's not the way that I would do it. It's pretty sloppy, I think. But I think having like a 5 where you block, I mean, like it's pretty obvious that when they all check all the way to this point in the hand, that like they're not going to show up with really, really, really strong hands unless they have pocket 5s. It's also obvious that they're going to play pocket 5s this way, like at a very high clip. And I agree with you that when you decide to bet, you're going to want to use a really large sizing. So all of that has the effect
should it be bigger? Like, because obviously if we go over pot, like do we start to lose? Like, if I have queen 8 here, can I really bet like 1.4x pot? That feels a little bit thin to me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're probably going to have like a 4x component that's going to mix between check and bet, and then it's going to be like relatively good queen x. I would say I think queen x is probably more likely. Queen 8 is more likely to bluff catch probably.
Yeah. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, so hands like 6s, etc. Like it's the fact that he shows up with this hand kind of speaks to my point. Like when they show up with a really strong hand, probably more likely to be 5s than anything else, right? So
yeah, 100%.
Okay, 3 bet's fine. Sizing was okay. Okay, so what do you think about this spot?
So these are spots where I'd say if I had done this hand history review like 6 weeks ago, I would have always bet these spots. And I'd still bet. Sorry, one sec. My headphones are talking over me. I'd still bet this spot mostly. And like to me, like did I better check this? I don't even know.
You checked.
Okay, yeah, I bet this spot mostly, but I used to always bet these boards for a small size, but I realized that when you bet these boards, like we want to be utilizing like 60% and bigger. Like if we have ace king and ace queen, we can probably carve out like closer to pot. So that made me like start checking some more of these kind of hands, like the weak jack X. Like if I had jack 10, queen jack, king jack, I would definitely still bet here. And I don't know if that strategy is right, but that's where I would be.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, like it sounds like you're thinking about most of it reasonably, except for like the non-viability of betting small. So
no, I would still
you
bet
are
small.
right that like
I'm not saying I wouldn't bet small. Like if I had ace 5 here, I'd bet small. I wouldn't start sizing up with ace 5.
Okay, nice.
If I had my good, like if I had king jack and jack 10, I would use the smaller sizing. But like I know that I used to only bet small on these boards is what I mean. I used to just bet range on all my ace X boards. Now I've started betting bigger as well with the hands I mentioned.
Yeah, you started chunking some things into some like this component of the strategy.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, nice one. Yeah. So as long as you're capable of betting small, I agree with basically everything you said. You also mentioned that you would bet this hand a lot still. So I mean, like it sounds like you've got the flop in a pretty good place. And I think once you check back the flop, you shouldn't really consider too much reopening the turn. I think once you check back the flop, this hand mostly checks back the turn. So I like the turn check, and then you reopened here. So what are you thinking about in this type of a spot?
That I've checked twice and I'm likely to have the best hand. Obviously, don't want to open the action for too small, but I also feel like it's pretty thin to still like go much bigger because I do think I don't know. Like I still think it's a spot where we're going to get check raised a reasonable amount because I'm pretty fucking capped at this point, right?
Yep.
Like I think opening the action obviously makes it dicey against better players and higher stakes. But at the same time, I felt like I should bet. Looking at it now, like I feel like a jack is probably worth more than half pot, and like this is like more of a 10x sizing, or and I'm like opening myself up to get check raised a lot, and like I don't really have anything when I bet this size. Like I could maybe have like a weak ace occasionally, but again, I think an ace like I feel super comfortable and probably bet closer to pot. So looking at it now, I think it's probably too small if I'm going to open the action on this board with this hand.
Okay, so this is a better one because this one we're gonna beat you up just a little bit. So when it comes to bet sizing in this spot, I actually really like what you did sizing wise. So I actually don't have a problem with what you came into the spot with. I like this type of a bet size. So there's nothing you can do about the nature of your range, right? Like you can't just suddenly reinvent it just because you get to the river. So the fact is, like, you check back a two-tone texture on the turn. So that's going to be a very, very, very capped range, right? Like there's nothing we can do about that because there's two flush draws to protect against. So if we have 9s, 4s, ace jack, ace 9, whatever, obviously those are betting turn. So we're quite capped on the river. What do you think the strongest hand you show up with here is at a reasonable clip?
Pocket 10s easily.
Yeah, it's easily pocket 10s, right? So yeah, so like that's kind of it. That's the card. That's the hand that kind of carries your range, and you just can't bet this hand. Is the real lesson. Like you can't bet, let alone like 10x or jack x. And yeah, like it's true that you have the best hand a lot, but your range is just so capped that I personally wouldn't have been reopening here. So this is like I didn't actually start out running all of them, but I transitioned to running all of them after a little bit. And because I kind of, this was kind of the genesis for that, just because I didn't think you could bet the river at all with this type of hand class, and it doesn't really like it. Once you check back the turn, you're just so capped. Tens is definitely
it's the best time we're going.
That's your like
and Jack 10 obviously.
But again, like with the nature of your range, I think betting, like thinking that you should stick to like half pot type of sizings, I think makes sense. Occasionally betting pot is interesting. It's not even pocket tens that bets pot, so it's it's a really interesting bet size that it's choosing there. But I think strategically it makes a lot of sense. Like once you check back the flop and check back the turn, I'm capped. I'm trying to reopen for some value. I'm going to reopen to half pot for those reasons. Kings and queens, pocket tens, etc., and then some offsets or some bluffs to incite calls. But I think this hand is just like way too thin. Like you just don't.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't want to take.
That's why I thought when I start saying that I should bet bigger, I thought that like it was it makes sense what you're saying, and it feels nitty to check it, but obviously for everything you're saying, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, actually, we can go back. Let me pull this in back up. It does feel tight to check because we expect to win, and like it's not very human to like check when you expect to win. But you have to kind of think through the downside risk of like kind of what you're inviting. And this isn't even that crazy. Like I actually checked this earlier, and like it doesn't even. It's a check with your hand, even before your opponent goes nuts, and because like this is only an 8% 2-bet, so 8.4% 2-bet, and I guess. For like everybody else, like there are some spots where the check raise might be 15%, and so like this is not one of them. The check raise is actually quite low, and we're still not able to bet Jack X. So I think against like a lot of your human opposition, you might find them check raising more often than this. Like I think you're going to find some players that, like myself, that might over check raise Jack 9. You're going to find some players that they might check bigger weights of King Queen or something, try to trap you more. So I would just assume that. You don't want to bet the river. I don't think there's many worlds where it gets better for you. All right, so this seems fine from these positions. If you 4-bet sometimes, I think that's probably okay, but folding a lot's probably good. So when you flat here, what do you think about in a spot like this? How do you think about building your flatting strategy?
I just with this hand or just in general?
Like just your range. Like is this like are you flatting with King Jack too? Like is this the worst hand that you would flat with?
I would imagine that King Queen off is going to be a mix. I wouldn't say it's pure flat or pure call, right? Pure flat or pure re-raise. I would at this stack depth, I would lean towards probably tree betting. If this was suited, I would tree bet it now, and then as we get shallower, I'd kind of swap it around. Okay. So yeah, good.
Yeah, sure. So like this hand's 0% call. That's why I was asking. And so like I just wanted to make sure that we weren't flatting hands like King Jack or anything worse than this. But so this hand we should be just 3-betting about a third of the time. So at this stack depth, we don't really flat with too many offsuit combos at all. Right? Obviously, for folding this one, we don't flat with too many offsuit combos. We're going to mostly draw. We're going to be flatting pairs, suited hands, in particular suited ace highs, etc. Because there's a relatively high probability that someone else overcalls behind you. And if you have if you have a hand like King Queen offsuit, you're really very likely playing a 3 or a 4-way pot when you flat from the hijack, right? So the types of one pair hands you make aren't going to be as valuable in like big multi-way pots. So you tend to stick to like suited stuff in this spot at this stack depth, things that draw to really strong hands. So I would have 3-bet pre. So I don't get here much. But once we do get here
against earlier position, I'd say we're on the button at the exact same the button or the cutoff. I just because if I'm obviously I've got this, I can look at the same charts, but there is more flatting right of the offsuit when you go deeper now on the button. No, or am I completely wrong? And that like you want to 3-bet suited because you can call the 4-bets, or am I just completely wrong? I get that. Like obviously I'm in the hijack here, and it's
so there's like some comparison that you're trying to make right between.
Yeah, I just think
where you're saying like at 100 big blinds you're flatting more offsuit hands than you would at 50 big blinds.
Yeah.
So. This is the flat component, 16.4. This is 100.
This is when we're on the button, I assume, right? Because obviously you said
exactly. This is the button, correct? I mean, I'm just sticking with the example that you.
No, that looks but that strategy there is like the strategy that was there a second ago was kind of the strategy that I had in my head, where it was like a mix between King Queen off and then.
So so you're flatting. Sorry, so this is actually UTG. I clicked on UTG +1 before, but UTG 2.5x's button strategy is flat 15.4%. And if you had 50 big blinds, the opening strategy would be 2.3x. So it's a little bit smaller, but the flattening strategy is 16.3. So I don't think that I mean, obviously we could talk about, I guess, like the offsuit combos specifically, because you were referencing the offsuit combos, I think, specifically though, right? So if we look at the offsuit combos, there are more offsuit combos. Like at the margin, they're pretty close. I mean, for what it's worth, they're pretty similar. So there's not like some strong divergence. But at shorter stacks, King Jack offsuits being pure flatted, and at deeper stacks, King Queen offsuits or King Jack offsuits being pure folded. So I would argue the other way.
Okay, sweet.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so 3-bet pre. Check flop seems fine. Thoughts here?
I hope I defend. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a mistake.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'd call. Okay. You ever check raising here? You mostly calling? What do you like to do?
I used to check raise this spot all the time, but I'm not sure. Again, like the 100 big blinds is obviously not where I play most of the poker that I play, and then 100 big blinds and more is like less familiar for me. But from running some sims recently, it's like, but they weren't at this stack depth. They're at like 30 to 60 big blinds. Like a lot of time when it's pair plus flush draw, we just call. But at this stack depth, now at the way I play right now, I would mostly call. But I feel like it can't be a huge mistake to check raise.
Okay, sure, yeah. All of that's correct. Like it's not a big mistake to check raise. Like check raising is a part of what you need to be doing sometimes, but mostly we should be calling. So I just wanted to kind of hear like how you're thinking about it. But that looks good. Thoughts here?
I don't think the tree changes enough for me to lead. Really. Oh, sorry, it does. Sorry, 4-5 obviously makes it straight, so it's obviously a lot better for me than him. I think I could lead sometimes, but I don't know if I want to lead with this hand. But obviously, I get a lot of protection still against parts of his range. Like he's going to see bet this board pretty wide for the size that he did. I would mostly check this in game. Like if this is like a 6 or a deuce, and I did this hand, I don't know if I would lead, but like the 6s and the deuces would be the cards I lead most. I don't do it as often on a tree because I don't have 4 or 5 off pre. I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to digress really quickly. So for the guys that are watching, this is PO Solver is the program that's doing the analysis, and the replayer is Poker Tracker 4. So people are asking about like what programs we're using and stuff. So we're mostly using PO Solver and Poker Tracker 4. Okay, so when it gets to, so I'm just going to pull this now. So first of all, I think the leading's reasonable.
Okay.
I don't think I checked out the turn here. I didn't go through every single one all the way through. So, but I do think that I would lead, but we'll see what the solver says. So, okay, so we check. Opponent's supposed to bet. He's supposed to like use, like, I guess like a slight bias towards larger sizings. I think he bet small, but he's supposed to have a slight bias towards larger sizings. When we have 8-2 of spades, 36% 2-bet. I said that raising would be fine. But I said that mostly calling is good, and that's with your hand correct. And we call, and then the turn is like some random 3, I think, right? 3 of hearts. And we end up with a very substantial lead component.
Okay, so I wouldn't lead that turn that frequently. Does this give
your hand is actually in that context mostly a check. It's a 77% check, but it's a very substantial lead component on this turn.
Do we have 4 or 5 off? Yeah, we have 4 or 5 off. See, I don't know if I would have defended that, but I think that changes it like a lot, right?
Probably matters a lot, yeah, on this particular turn.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And 1 second, let me just go back to the pre-flop component. Yeah, he only 2.2x. So I mean, you should definitely have 4 or 5 off.
It was only from the hijack. Yeah, no, I actually would. I actually would. Yeah.
Okay, sure. And then you ended up checking the river here. What do you think?
I don't think my hand's good enough to block.
Okay.
And, like, I don't think I want to bluff it. Like, I mean, I don't think he has a lot of 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks. I don't think I'm making him fold a pair very frequently, given how I played it, unless I go quite big. And I just think I win a lot.
So you just checked, okay, based on that. Okay. So like I said, I haven't checked the sim yet, but I think you
I'm supposed to jam?
Because I'm lazy. So I haven't checked the sim yet, but I do think that like your hand's good enough to block. I think that once he checks back the turn on like a low board like this.
I thought you said I was supposed to jam, and I just was like, what? Okay.
No, block. Yeah. I think your hand is good enough to block. And the reason, yeah, definitely don't jam. Don't do that. The reason that I think that your hand's good enough to block is because your opponent, like one of the ways that like helpful kind of like, I guess, heuristics for whether or not a range is protected is to think about like how many value bets he has. So if he has a lot of value bets, it becomes really easy to protect the check because you can just carve some of them off, right? So this is like kind of a principle for playing a little hold'em, which is what's really helps your development. So if your opponent has a lot of value bets to choose from, you can hive some of them off. And essentially, you can spare some to protect the checking range, right? When your opponent doesn't have a lot of value bets to choose from, he can't afford to slot them into the checking component, right? So this range will probably be more capped than other ranges because there are fewer value bets that can be kind of, like I said, hived off to slot into the checking strategy. Any value bet that he has, he probably needs on the turn in order to barrel, because his value bets get defined as overpairs, and overpairs just like that's not a lot of combos, right? So if we go back and we look at his turn, at the turn strategy for him, so you check, and we look at like, you know, how someone might protect the checking component. So deuces and threes can't check. Sevens, even, which blocks your top pair, can't check. Sixes really can't. I mean, like, these are 14% checks. These really aren't meaningfully weighted checks. Aces is actually high frequency checking, so that's kind of cool to see. So
but
king, aces, and king
nobody's doing that, right? Like, I know like the bot always protects this range really well, but like nobody checks aces on the turn really. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably check aces. I wouldn't have checked kings, but I probably would have found this part of it myself. But yeah, like I said, it's difficult to protect this range like too much, because you just don't have enough value bets. And if you're going to try to double barrel with, like, I don't know, queen 10 offsuit, and you can see the bias there towards the spade. But if you're going to double barrel there with queen 10 offsuit, you're going to need like most of your value bets to kind of protect those bluffs. So your opponent check back the turn, which we would assume leads him to have a fairly capped range. We catch like some brick jack river. I think it's jack of hearts, but I could be wrong. Jack of clubs. I'm the worst. My memory is terrible. So jack of clubs. And I said that your hand, I thought, was good enough to lead, and we can see that your hand's pure leading. Okay. So, and again, that's mostly just due to the cap range. Like, yeah, he has aces, but he doesn't have anything else, right? So, yeah. I thought, like, you can just like kind of smack face first into a jack. That's just not. There aren't that many ways to even do that, because that's where your opponent's double barrels come from on the turn, right? Okay.
So, yeah, I wouldn't have got that. I wouldn't have thought I'd block it.
Sure. So yeah, block's not unreasonable. Okay, this is another interesting one. These hands were all like really interesting. You played them all like you played a lot of these hands differently than how I would have played them. That's all. So
so wrong is what you're saying.
Well, you know, differently. I guess. Oops. All sorts of things. Okay, so we limp the small blind, and big blind checks, and so far this is going, you know, very standard. You check the flop. That's reasonable. He bets. You call. Not folding much here. So probably going to look to use like I don't know, before I check the sim, something like, you know, something like below a 25% fold. Probably going to fold something like 22 or 23% here, something like that, if not less. So we check call, and then he overbets the turn. So what are you thinking about now? So the flop's pretty standard. I mean, maybe I said less, maybe not. Maybe you want a 27% fold the flop. It's going to be somewhere in there, 22 to 27%. What do you do on the turn, though?
I think it's a troublesome spot for me, but I don't think I have the option to fold king 9 yet. I don't know if I fold it. I hope I don't. But like, obviously, I don't really have 10-6. I don't really have 5-6. I can have jack 10, but I'd probably lean towards stabbing it. So I just think that I don't really have a choice. Obviously, having the king of spades isn't that great, but I think it's unlikely that he's going to overbet the turn with king high spades. Like, that, like, intuitively doesn't feel right, because he can still win and stuff. I think I just have to call. I think, like, I'm in trouble, and I'm probably going to face some big bets on the river, but I don't think I can fold yet when I just check call one big blind on the flop, and now I've got second pair of the best kicker.
Okay. So I would have folded. And I think so I think that, like, I think it's really it's annoying when this happens, when you have this type of equity. But the bottom line is, to me, you need to try to think about. So what was missing, I think, was that I can't actually sub this in like properly, because it's too deep. It takes too long. It's too much work. It's take a few hours. So, but when we think this through, okay, so what's going on? So he's betting like a little bit less than 1.5x pot. So if he's betting 1.5x pot, we have to defend 40% of our range.
Yeah, there's better components.
In that context, like, a bunch of pairs and things get start. So like the fact that you have a king kicker is basically a blank, because your opponent's betting range doesn't include 9x. So your kickers don't matter when you have a pair of 9s. So, and a pair of 9s is really actually not any better than a pair of 8s, because again, your opponent's not value betting with a pair of 9s, not to the sizing, right? So a pair of 9s, pair of 8s, and a pair of 7s are all structurally similar. The only difference will be that some of those hands will have draws and some of them won't, right? So you'll have 7x of spades, 8x of spades. You'll have 7x with a 6, 7x with a 5, 8x with a 6, 8x with a 5, 9x with a 6.
Sorry, just to cut across, but you think you will overbet the turn with 8x and 7x of spades?
Pardon me? No, I'm evaluating your calling strategy.
Sorry.
No, yeah, I'll go. So okay, I can walk this back. So do you think he's overbetting 9x, like one pair 9x for value?
No, obviously not.
Okay, cool. So yeah, neither do I. So that means that if your opponent's not overbetting one pair 9x for value, then your 9 blocker is not really worth much more than an 8 blocker, unless you think that a 9 blocks like 2 pair more or something like that, which I don't think is the case. I think your opponent probably can have 7s up, 8s up, or 9s up, kind of equally. So I don't think that a pair of 9s is worth more money than a pair of 8s or a pair of 7s, right? That's part one. So once we kind of equalized all of your pairs, right, so that we're not overvaluing one relative to another, we start to say that something like 7-5 is better than king 9, 7-6 is better than king 9, 8-5 is better than king 9, 8-6 is better than king 9, 10-7 is better than king 9, jack 7 is better than king 9, jack 8 is better than king 9, 10-8 is better than king 9, right? And once you get there,
it's not top 40% anymore.
Then you're starting.
The people in the chat, if the reason why he's saying that, of course, is obviously with those hands I can improve against his value range a lot easier. Like I can make straights.
Yeah, correct. Those hands are draws against the strong hands his opponent will have. His opponent's likely to have hands like 2 pair, potentially a straight, which would suck. But a lot of 2 pair, potentially some sets and things like that. Maybe ace X is still possible. Maybe you check back a hand like ace 5 and he's willing to make this type of a thin bet with it. And so if you have a hand like king 9, the way that king 9 performs against the strong hands that his opponent is likely to have is actually inferior to the way that a hand like 7-5 might perform, or a hand like 7-6 would more clearly illustrate it, might perform against those really strong hands. 7-6 would outperform king 9 essentially. So we would rather have those types of hands. And so now it is close. I ran a proxy or like a crude model of this hand. And if your opponent bets pot, this hand is a call. And if your opponent bets 2x, your hand's mostly a call against pot, but still folding some, like folding about 20% against PSB. If your opponent bets 2x pot, your hand's pure fold, but against this exact bet size.
I think as well, if the bot is saying that I should fold to that size, it's like people aren't gonna find these bluffs as much as the bot will, so it becomes more of a fold against a human. We'd agree with that. I know we always want to try and like play as close to it, but like people, I don't think find over bluffs that other people, the bot will, right?
Sure. Yeah. So when you start to overlay like how like an actual human might play this spot, your opponent's supposed to be bluffing about like at least half the time, probably in a situation like this one. So like, for every 7-8 or 8-9 or jack 10 or something, he has to find some way of bluffing. And it's obviously much easier to value bet. Just as a human, it's easier to like have a set of 8s here and bet really big than it is to have like king 5 and to decide to do the same thing. So yeah, I mean, like I don't disagree that there's potentially like room for some overweight value component that we might be concerned about. But yeah,
it makes it worse. It just makes it worse on my end anyway. So.
And then we spike gin. Like this is pretty good river, but we don't get any more action. So this is kind of what I mean, right? So like your opponent has, we'll kind of digress for the sake of the audience. So when Fintan's opponent has ace 2 offsuit, Fintan would have much rather shown up with 7-6, right, on the turn. So like facing this really large bet here, not knowing now that his opponent has ace deuce, we would much rather at this point now have 7-6, and then if we have 7-6, we can win on a 5, a 10, a 6, or 7. Whereas with king 9, we can only win with a king or a 9. Right? So we have a lot more outs on the turn with 7-6 than we do with king 9 against the actual hand that he shows up with. And that's not surprising. And so like you can predict that. And so that's why we would kind of prefer to shape our calling range the way that I was talking about.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, man.
Cool. So we overcalled, or back, I don't know what you'd call this, I guess. But we defend
I wasn't sure. This spot, like right here, I really wasn't too sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still call. I think you still have to call closing the action. And like, I think some people like really want to, I know some people strategically want to fold tons here because like they're just so capped and they're so screwed. That's
what I was worried about.
Yeah, but I think you still have to call like, with hands like this one. So I think your call's good. I would check raise here kind of a lot. You'd ended up calling. I don't think calling's bad. I would check call here sometimes too, but I would just wanted to highlight that I would also check raise.
Yeah.
This seems fine.
Could you go bigger?
I also don't mind
would you consider
check call, checking. Because like your range, like one of the things to think about, I should have asked you some questions. Sorry about that. Problem. But yeah, I just kind of steamrolled and took over. But when you think about your check calling range on the flop, what do you think that range is probably? Like, think about what you did pre-flop,
Yeah,
right?
it's
You
like
call
8s,
and you
9s,
deal.
10s, Jack X,
Right,
flush draws
exactly.
sometimes.
Yeah. So then you check call, check, and then you get to the river, and like you just don't have like you do have some amount of like hands that need to bluff, like king, queen of diamonds.
Yeah, not a lot.
You have like some amount of that, but it's really specific because it's like when I said king, queen of diamonds, that's probably it, right? Like you flatted the EP open, and then you also called the 3-bet. So like you probably like you felt obligated to call with ace jack suited, but we both don't strategically, like we know we're capped, so we're not trying to call with every single suited hand that we can have. So we don't have queen 10, for example, or like something worse than that, right? So we have king queen, and maybe we have like ace queen suited. We probably would have gotten it in with ace king pre-flop, right? So if we'd done something cute, we don't have it now. So when we check call the flop, we have exactly king queen of diamonds and like exactly ace queen, but ace queen doesn't really need to bluff. So it's only really king queen of diamonds that needs to bluff. That's not a lot. Like there's not. I mean, I don't know, maybe you can come up with something else, but there doesn't seem
really.
to be. Like,
I mean, if I am, I'm just like, we're really reaching, right?
It's really tough.
Do you want to explain? You'll articulate it a lot better than me. Just for the people in the chat, because we're saying it a lot. Do you want to explain what capped is?
Yeah, sure. So cap just means that he can't have any really strong hands. That if when he calls this range before the flop, so over here, so when he calls this bet before the flop, if Fintan had a really strong hand, he probably would have re-raised. If he had aces, if he had kings, if he had queens, he probably would have re-raised pre-flop. So when this player attacks in this spot, this player is going to be doing a lot of defending, but it's really hard on Fintan because we just don't have any of the really, really, really strong hands to get involved with. And then when we call the flop, when we call pre-flop,
it pretty much strips them.
The hands that are left are hands very specifically like ace jack suited, king queen suited, maybe queen jack suited, ace queen suited. It's going to be suited hands in particular because we're trying to draw against some really strong hands. So we're not going to flat any offsuit hands at all. So so that when we get here and then we check call this flop and we think about like what hands we're likely to have, we're pretty likely to have like sevens with a diamond. If you have sevens with no diamond, I would advocate probably just folding. So if you have like seven, we're very likely to have like sevens with a diamond, eights with a diamond, nines with a diamond, something along those lines, right? So we check call and we get to the river. And now like you can make some argument around betting like 25,000 with those hands. And you can make some argument about checking with those hands. Those seem to be like the two viable paths for pocket sevens with a diamond, for example. And I don't see much else. So like, even though I don't hate this because like you have ace jack, it strategically doesn't make a lot of sense. Like there's, like outside of king, queen of diamonds, there's no other hand you really want to bet like this. And so I personally would have slotted the ace jack into one of the two slots that would have where pocket sevens would have gone, with the hopes that my opponent tries to take advantage of the fact that my range is overweight sevens for doing those two things, right? So if you bet 25,000 and that range is overweight sevens, and then he might jam on you. If you check, and then that range is overweight sevens or eights, then he might bet and bluff, right? And
would you just check call river if he did decide?
Yeah, I think so.
You can obviously have ace four.
I mean, like I'd probably check call the river, but I think PSR would tell me to shove.
Okay.
But
yeah, that makes sense. That's a spot that I like. Obviously, it is an uncomfortable spot, but that's a spot that I often struggle with in game when you are capped and you're stuck in the middle and you're out of position.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I just think that, like, you just want to put things in the context of like, since you can't, it's very difficult. Like, particularly as like we're humans, right? It's very difficult to think holistically about your range and narrow down every single combo. But it's much easier to think about what do I have mostly.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what do I have mostly? I think mostly you have sevens. I mean, like it's really it's really tough to think that that's you don't mostly have some.
Especially when I don't check raise the flop, like I kind of get stripped to the ace jack a reasonable amount as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you get really dense sevens, and so like I really want to think about making sure that I'm covering sevens, however I want to play sevens on the river, that I'm making sure that I'm protecting that subset of hands, and yeah, like slotting this hand into the however you would play sevens seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Cool. So how wide are you? So this is like the omega action spot. So raise 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
so
I was streaming this with Spraggy and I was like, this is pretty stupid, but I'm not folding. I'm pretty sure we ran into aces, right?
Yeah.
I obviously don't tree bet enough pre-flop. That is one of the issues. It tends to be that I don't tree bet enough from the blinds. Like, we've been working together for over a year, and anytime we do a review, my tree bet is just too slow, like not enough from the blinds. I've been trying to work it that I'm a little bit more linear and I do 3-bet more. Obviously that goes against the fact that you see me flatting that fucking king queen off like 20 minutes ago.
Sure.
But I don't think I'm just like super heavy value here or anything. Like, you know, but for the 5-bet to come in, it doesn't matter what you really think of what my 3-betting tendencies are. Like, if people don't fucking pull the trigger here light very often, maybe once in a blue moon we'll see ace queen, but like, he's going to have a good hand. Like, he's going to have ace king,
of course,
queens plus, maybe jacks if he's like really thinks we're out of line. But I don't think people that play against me in 1Ks and 2Ks are going to think that I'm super out of line pre-flop. Certainly not. So I don't think jacks is going to turn up here. I mean, I don't even think Vlad's going to be that out of line. Like, obviously it's not the worst spot, but I still think he's going to, again, have to turn up with like really ideal 4-bet bluffing hands or like just have it, right? So, I mean, I don't think I'm...
Yeah, so what would you do with queens?
Oh, I would have folded queens.
Okay, what do you do with ace king?
I mean, maybe in a 1K I'd call ace king suited and fold ace king off just because I don't think I have a big edge and I don't know if I want to be passing. And I think that... honestly, I'm not sure. I might have folded, but I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that I'm supposed to not fold ace king suited.
No, they're all folds. I just want to make sure you're folding all of them.
Okay. I would have folded ace king
just
off,
go
but I
with
wasn't
kings
sure
and
about
aces.
ace. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is good. I mean, like, because if you couldn't go broke with kings, you wouldn't shove aces, right? So
yeah,
kings is in there, but none of the other hands are.
Okay,
it's just kings. Sucks though. As soon as you're seeing it, you're like, you know,
yeah.
I'm like, oh fuck, he's gonna have aces. I'm gonna lose. This is an interesting one.
Oh, yeah, I remember this hand. I didn't like this for what it's worth, but I was just like, there's so much money in the middle. If I don't have the best hand, I don't have the best hand. I feel like calling is awful. I'd obviously, if I had like ace jack here, or if I had king jack even, I'd feel more comfortable. If I had an overpair, I'd feel super pumped. But there's 61k in the middle, and like I feel when Vea bets that size into 3 people, don't get me wrong, I'm sure he will have strong hands, but I don't think he's doing it with a jack that wants to bet. So like a couple of sets, and then are the other 2 players really not raising with a strong hand at this point? Like, who's going to call 2 pair there? Is anyone like the button could have like king jack and ace jack that maybe don't want to raise sometimes. I think they're going to 3-bet pre-flop a reasonable amount. So I just thought there was too much money in the middle, and I was just going to roll with it. And if I was cooler, I was cooler.
Right. Okay. I think it's just a fold.
I think it's a fold, yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay. So
I do think that it's
all in?
Right here with the diamond. So
okay.
Yeah. So if you had queen jack with the queen of diamonds, I'd run it.
It did feel disgusting for what it's worth. Like, I remember because I was on stream and I remember being like, "This is vile." And
yep.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that you're correct in assuming that your range plays shove or fold. We've done a lot of work with simple 3-way. So we've done a lot of work at this point now. And so we've done a lot of work on multi-way pots. And yeah, in this type of scenario, I think, not 4-way, 3-way, obviously it's the name of the program, but I think that you're going to want to continue by shoving, and there's going to be a 0% call component basically. And so either shove or fold. And then I think that in that context, like top pairs all look kind of similar, but you're going to see like some kind of bias towards the ones that have a backdoor flush draw. The ones with the backdoor flush draw will.
There's a few people in the chat asking, don't you want your opponent to have the queen of diamonds? Would the queen of diamonds not mean that villains are more likely to have 2 pairs and sets? But it's the backup if we don't have the best hand and we're in bad shape, right? Is the reason we
right. Yeah. So they're not wrong. Now at a higher level, like no limit hold'em becomes about like how you weigh stuff that like is like basically less shitty or something that sucks less than other things. Like that's basically how poker works. Like lots of spots, like things will be close and you need to try to figure out like what's less bad. So okay, let's talk about the queen of diamonds. So the queen of diamonds, isn't it a card you'd like them to have? Absolutely, don't disagree. Problem, you have 3 ranges and they're all wide, like ish, and there are just too many hands in their ranges to say that the queen of diamonds is like an overly significant blocker. So for example, SVZ, he can have fucking anything. I mean, he can have a lot of different hands, right? So the queen of diamonds is not very particularly valuable against SVZ at all. I mean, I don't think that I need to explain that though. He's the third in. Yeah. So yeah. The other 2 players, the queen of diamonds is obviously more relevant, but even so, it's like the ace of diamonds would be particularly relevant for them. But like the queen of diamonds, while relevant, is not like egregiously so. I mean, it's not like it's not like they can't have weak hands now, for example. And so like it turns out, in my opinion, that and you can measure this using programs, but the queen of diamonds is going to be more valuable to Fintan as equity, as additional equity, than it is going to be a negative as a bad blocker, especially in a situation where there are 3 ranges and those ranges aren't particularly narrow yet. And the reason they're not particularly narrow yet is because we're dealing with small bet sizes. So when you have a small bet size, ranges get wider. When you have big bet sizes, ranges get tighter. So the bad blockers start to become more relevant. So again, small bet sizes, 3 players, queen of diamonds. How bad is it? It's probably not that big of a deal.
I think
how much equity does it add? It's it's helpful. So
if we have ace jack without a diamond, it's super clean, right? But do you think or do you not think it's super clean? Because to me, if I have ace jack here, I'm
no, I think all of the ace jacks are going to felt regardless.
Yeah, and then what about?
I would say that the ace of diamonds is going to give you a lot of equity, and you would still be going with it. And I think you would still see that bias towards you, but it would be a worse blocker. Like from the perspective of just evaluating as a blocker, the ace of diamonds is a worse blocker because it takes more flush draws out of their range than the queen of diamonds would. But it gives you more equity, right? And so you have to weigh those things, right? Poker's always about weighing like the good with the bad and coming out like with which is it better or worse, right? So
okay.
Hey YouTube, BBZ here, and I am just highlighting one of the highest value videos that we've got on BBZpoker.com, and that is the BBZ Ape Styles footage where the 2 of us are going back and forth. You get to see him pushing back on me when I'm giving my thought process. You get to see me defend that thought process and push back on him. And you get to see us thresh things out and try to settle on really solid strategies that you might not be able to find anywhere else. Okay, so this is the type of discussion that's just only available on BBZpoker.com, and I highly recommend you get over there and check that out.
So we call. So in this spot, like, how are you thinking about your defending strategy on the flop?
I would fold if I didn't have the 10 of diamonds, probably.
Okay,
multi-way.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the rest of the hand seems pretty standard. I just wanted to talk about the flop. This is fine. It's fine. I guess it's fine. It's also fine. All right, so here we go. So, what do you think about the flop sizing?
I just want to size up with queens and kings, I guess, a lot of the time. A lot of draws, a lot of straight draws. Got a lot of value from Jack X. Feel like maybe even go bigger sometimes.
Okay. So we've got a number of different bet sizes available to us on this board. I don't think there's any reason to assume that this was a bad one. Let me just go back and let me just pull a model for this. This was 60 big blinds. I've been rambling a lot, so we'll get some models pulled.
Just while Jordan's pulling that, I should have got something on the screen. But if anyone wants to find any more content like this, it's all on BBZpoker.com. There's training videos in there that Jordan's done with Tonka. There's training videos he's done with Spraggy. There's training videos he's done with myself. He's going to keep making more and more. And the course that I'm going to be going over, which I feel like is where I'm making the biggest leaks at the moment, is the ICM Masterclass. So I just wanted to plug it a little bit because I probably should have had it on the screen when you're grabbing that. And of course, we'll plug it again at the end. But if you want to check that out, and we get it in the chat as Harstar has there. And you can also catch him streaming on Twitch regularly. I think it's 3 or 4 times a week, right?
Yeah, I try to stream 3 days a week.
3 days a week, yeah, sweet.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
No problem. I should have had it on the screen. I should have, because I usually, obviously, we would do this with both of us on the screen, but I just left it to the last second. So, but next time we do this, which I'm going to have to win something even bigger, and we'll get Jordan back on, and we'll get some proper links on the screen, and I'll get to see this designed properly.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's sooner than later, right? Hopefully keep winning big tournaments. So, okay, so first things first. So I think that you can have a number of different bet sizes on the flop, and the reason I think that is because first of all, it's not obvious, but I'll go back. So to me, it's relatively obvious that we're going to see bet at a high frequency. The reasons we're going to see bet at a high frequency is we're opening from early position. So we have a strong range. The big blind's got a weak range. And then it's a jack high flop. So jack high flop means that we have, when you have a strong range, you're going to meaningfully interact with Broadway. So when the high card is a Broadway card, you're very likely to use a strategy that involves like basically close to 100% c-betting. So what we see in the model is 91% c-betting, which is really not surprising. Anytime you're going to c-bet that often, almost anytime, you're typically going to see some smaller sizings creep in because it's difficult to bet like your entire range to like really big bets, right? So we're going to use a number of different bet sizes on the flop. Really large is okay. The other thing I would kind of steer away from is you don't want to overbet this type of flop. Typically overbetting is reserved for rainbow flops. So the fact that it's two-tone means overbetting is out. So, okay, so that's how we start. We start with, we're probably going to bet range. We're probably not going to overbet. And within that kind of distribution between something small and pot, right? We can probably bet with whichever sizing we want, because we have hands and value bets that will be efficient in that context. So once you got there, you chose this sizing, which I don't dislike. How do you think about having spades versus not having spades?
In what sense? Like, should it increase?
So you have a number of different bet sizes probably, because I don't think you're checking. I don't think you should be checking this flop much. And so as soon as you choose the really large one, almost by definition, you have smaller sizings, right? So you have to think about like all of them. And so
I would probably, and this is not what Pio is going to do, but in game, like I would bet my overpairs almost always for a larger sizing, and I know that's like going to be completely wrong strategy, and I'm going to have to balance it. But like in game and the way I play, like I just would size up here with my overpairs, and I would use like stuff like Queen 10 and King 10 and 9-10 to offset it. But I would usually always bet like I have like 3 buttons on it. It'd be like 75% or pot, and this is, I assume, 75%. So
okay. So just very quickly, just the thing that you're going to run into, because especially since you're streaming, is that like it's very tempting. Like there's going to be you should be up against like fairly aggressive 2-bet strategies when you bet small, right? Because like that's like almost by definition, like that's how it works. Like if you bet really small, you typically have like at least marginally weaker hands, and so you should get check raised more. And you're going to have a hard time coping with check raises when you bet small if you're slotting all of your overpairs into big sizings.
But I wouldn't always use Jack X, right? I'd use my good Jack X smaller more frequently, just because I don't block the Jack X. And like obviously that's not all my range, and like that's still going to be troublesome. Yeah,
you're trying to find some simplistic ways of like trying to protect.
Yeah.
So like, you know, your sets, I think like pocket jacks, for example, that's pretty efficient to bet small. So like that's pretty obvious, right? Pocket eights to a lesser extent, same kind of idea. Deuces probably is one of the ones that might go into a bigger sizing. But I think that kings with a spade should probably mostly be going into like your alternative sizings, like whatever, not exclusively, but just mostly. Like I think like whatever your larger sizings are, kings with a spade is probably not in there. It's going to be this like larger bet size strategy should be biased towards value protection bets, and that's like really one of the primary purposes of these really large bet sizes on the flop. That's why when people like try to use like a one size fits all bet size strategy, they miss a lot of EV. Like a hand like pocket queens really wants to bet larger now.
That's how I would have, like if this was like a 10-eye board, I would have said to you jacks and queens or the two that, you know, like the ace 10s, the jacks and queens. But I would have thought that aces does that more than kings, and kings was closer to betting large all the time.
Right.
Obviously, you've got the evidence. Like that's how I would have thought about it. I'm not saying it's right, you know.
Sure. Oh yeah, that's fine. So I just think that I personally like kings with a spade. Like it's still betting to like you know your larger sizing sometimes, but I do think that you can just see like it's more dense the larger sizings when you have like no spade. So I'll just be like biased away from. This is a more flexible combo. Let's call it that way. This end's more flexible, and I would use to protect like the alternatives. And kings with no spade is like less flexible and gets slotted into this type of an answer more often. The other thing to keep in mind is make sure that you're bluffing enough when you're using larger bet sizes. There is the tendency to like massively overweight these hands on the strength side. So like, how often do you? I mean, I don't like asking you 3 questions because I don't want to set you up to give me a bad answer, but we'll ask anyways. What kind of a ratio, like what kind of a bluff to value bet ratio do you think you need to have here? So like how many bluffs per pocket king's hand are you trying to, like just in the back of your head, like how much?
I would assume that it's close to 2 to 1, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be, cool. That's roughly speaking like right where you need to be. You should be bluffing about, just make sure that when you're betting 18,000, that you're bluffing twice as often as you're value betting, right?
Yeah.
So,
and nobody's doing that with this.
Very tempting to just, like it's very easy to just have pocket kings and bet huge.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, I would definitely use the hands like that you've talked to me before, like the way we carve out the larger bluffs would be hands such as like king queen that, you know, replicate the queens and the kings, and I'd use queen 10 and 9-10. But I don't know if I'm finding enough of them, because like I'm not like setting off very frequently against big blind here. Like if I have like pocket fives, like more often than not, I will just use a smaller size on this board rather than electing to just straight away on the flop set off with the intention of firing it off, you know. I don't know where you're going to generate all the bluffs from. Like that's just me saying I don't use those kind of hands very frequently with the larger size.
Right. So we can see that there's like so this is the composition that's tied to like a larger bet size on the flop. So we can see that like we can try to identify if there's anything where things are a little bit more dense. So 6x is like a pretty is a not unreasonable shortcut for trying to find some things. This is probably some ace of clubs stuff.
Sorry, this is the big blind or something, all right? Because we don't have 10-6.
No, we've checked. Big blind's checked. So root check, and then this is like the betting range. That's why you're betting 75%. So this is the betting range, and now the reason it looks weird is because I've selected the large bet size.
Yeah, no, I just don't have 10-6 suited, and that's why I'm confused because it's under.
Oh shit! 1 second. No, I've chosen the wrong flop.
Yeah, no, all good.
Yeah, I just pulled over the wrong. I just clicked on the flop. There we go. Sorry about that. There we go. It's this one. I've got a lot of sims up.
Yeah, no, of course. I know. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a bunch. Sorry about that. Thanks for catching me though. So good eye. Okay, so we look at this larger bet size, and we have we have king queen, and I don't know what the hell I was thinking about.
Yeah, so it's using the pairs. This is exactly what I was talking about, where I might not be using them enough, where it's like it's slipping in at like over 25%.
Yeah, so
pocket threes, pocket fours.
3s, 4s. Yeah, so the more like the ones that are really, really far down, as opposed to like 7s, right? So better to use 3s than 7s, kind of thing.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so there's a good amount of like this.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's coming in at the weight of the range. So the range is using this large sizing 25%, and 10-9 is in there at about the weight of the range. So it's not overweight this hand. It's just like not underweight this hand. But we see that like the range is overweight like ace 5. So like ace 5 of hearts. So like the range is it's quite efficient. So it's an attractive strategy to like ace 5, ace 4, ace 3, like hearts.
Yeah, I would definitely miss some of that, like 100%.
Cool, nice. Okay, let's keep going. I think it's fine. So, are you ever checking this hand back at all or no?
I mean, did I just min raise or 2.28 like pre-flop? I feel like he should lead the deuce like extremely heavily, and when he doesn't, I might even be able to bet bigger on the turn and start threatening stacks a little bit more comfortably.
I mean, I'm
going to check sometimes, but more often than not, I'm going to bet just because I think, again, like he should be leading the deuce a lot. You know, he has a lot of suited deuces still, and I think it's a turn he'll probably lead a lot, right? So
like he's going to lead. He's going to have a non-zero lead. So like there are most turns he won't be able to lead at all. He'll be able to lead this turn, but it's not going to be a lot because, like you said, it's going to be the suited deuces, not the offsuit deuces. He would lead more of the 8 paired, for example.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So on a relative basis, he'll have a non-zero lead, but it will be like 10%, 15%, something like that. Whereas on an 8, it might be 45, 55, something along those lines.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because you bet so big on the flop, he might actually lead like 80%. Yeah. He might actually lead like 80% on an 8.
Yeah, and he doesn't, and he loses a lot of deuces because he probably just has like deuce X of clubs and stuff. So yeah, my logic's not actually that sound.
Yeah. Okay. So but first, your bet size was perfect though. So like I think you made a criticism. You talked about your bet being.
Sorry, I thought I had 220k left after the bet. Yeah. No, I thought I had 220k after the bet. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, so bet sizing was perfect, and then this hand I think needs to pure bet the turn, and like not mix to check ever. So I just wanted to make sure that you were not.
I would just play for stacks here on that card.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Okay, so I think the pre-flop 3-bet's good. I don't have a problem with that. And we see with the flop, which, I mean, like it's a 3-bet pot, and there's 2 Broadway cards, and you're 3-betting mostly a linear range. So you should assume that the way that your bluffs are constructed, right, your bluffs interact with the flop very well, because we're 3-betting from the top of the deck down. So we're going to bet range. So C-bet 100 is probably the answer. Thoughts here?
I think
bet sizing. Like how do you think about your range?
I assume I'm trying to set up geometrically. I think that he check raises the 10 a lot on the flop. I guess he can have aces and kings sometimes. Double flush draws. I think I just would bet this hand a lot. I mean, maybe like I want to just check this and not bet. I'm bet when I have kings and ace, so I don't block the queen X. I can keep paying me off. But I'm not 100% sure on the answer. I don't know, but I would just lean towards betting this on this board just because I think we can still get a lot of value off draws. Obviously, having the ace of spades isn't the best for that, I guess, but I would just lean towards
so let's assume you bet range on the flop. So how are you protecting your checking range on the turn? Because you're going to have some, like, presumably because you're 3-betting like somewhat linearly, especially with what you were talking about earlier, you're going to have hands like pocket 9s that 3-bet pre-flop, like, you know, a reasonable clip, pocket 8s, etc. And that's because, like, even though those hands are good calls, they're really not that much better at the stack depth of a call than a 3-bet. Like they're very close. They're very similar in terms of their expectation. So we would expect to take both answers with a hand like pocket eights, even though most people will just call. So if we have hands like pocket nines and pocket eights, like we're going to have those checks. It's impossible not to. There's, the second flush draw came in that's pretty strong for Black 88. And the reason that it's pretty strong for Black 88 is because the weakest part of someone's range is typically going to be like a backdoor flush draw. And so his range before the flop is almost purely suited hands. So he doesn't have like one spade hands to call the flop with, right? So he's going to have like two heart hands to call the flop with instead. And so like now he's got two flush draws. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to bluff. Because his range got a little bit stronger. So we're going to have like ace five of diamonds, for example, and that may or may not want to check. And we're going to have like I said, pocket nines, pocket eights. So you're going to have some hands that get forced into a check bucket. So how do you think about protecting those hands?
Well, I mean, this one is after everything you said about him having the hearts. I mean, having ace queen with the queen of hearts and making it less likely makes the flush seems like a pretty solid one to check. I obviously have queens, but that's fuck all combos that I would check on a turn after betting flop. If I bet, like I bet, I mean, maybe I meant to check queens, but I would lean towards betting flop with queens. I have a bunch of 10x that like I can check, but then we have 2x pot on the river with the hands that can, they're super nutted, and I don't know if I want to check them. They might be too strong. So obviously, when I say all that, having a queen makes it less likely that he's going to be able to really pay me on the turn. And like if he has nines that called once, or if he has ace jack that called once, they're all folding anyway. So maybe this is a pretty efficient check when you break it down.
Right, I would have checked. And this is another one that I haven't checked out yet, but I would have checked this hand. Like this, your suits are just too relevant, right? Like I would bet ace queen sometimes, but you have spades and hearts, which is pretty hard. Like there's queen of spades on the board. So there's only one variation of ace queen that's going to have spades and hearts. It's this one. So I would pure check this personally, like just because like I'm not a computer, right? So like I'm subject to like human limitations on how I can actually handle this spot. I personally would have pure checked this hand, and I would have bet like ace queen of clubs, for example, right, where I get more protection from the spades. How do you feel about
checking aces? Like aces would have. Like,
I would have probably. Yeah, aces is a hand that I think I'm somewhat comfortable checking, but the problem is that you only have one overpair other than aces, and that's kings. So I would have probably been more. I probably would have pure bet aces as well, actually.
Okay.
I would have had a hard time checking aces, just because I don't think there's enough to value bet with. Kind of the same thing that I was talking about, the earlier idea, right? Like there's not that many value bets I can spare in a spot like this one, because there's just not that much to value bet with. It's either you have a queen, or you have kings, or you have aces, or you have a 10, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot else. There's nothing else to value bet with. So, okay, so like this is your strategy as the in-position player. I said you should just probably bet 100. It's good to see that's what you do.
Which I would,
Yeah, and then your opponent calls.
10 of spades.
And the turn,
no, sorry, not 10 of spades, excuse me.
It brings in the suit, but I don't remember which card it was. It's 2 of hearts. And your opponent checks, and aces and kings are pure betting, so that's good. So I guess that part right. And then ace queen. So spades and hearts is the most frequently checked variation. And so like you can see that all the variations are mixing to check, right? And like I suck.
Mine's the best check, like.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, yours is the best check. And I would have just pure bet like diamonds and clubs, for example, right? Like it's like 12% checking each variation because it can do that.
One thing you've kind of taught me is that you're never going to be able to think like this bot and remember, oh, this is 18% bet, right? So if you can like get simple cheats and like you see that these suits are the most checked, like obviously you want to be balanced, blah, blah, blah. But like if you 100% check this and then 100% bet the other ones, like that's not going to be a huge difference. And it's a lot easier to learn that way rather than trying to remember this exactly, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We like if you think you can replicate this strategy, like
knock yourself out.
So, yeah.
Sorry for those who don't know, the red orangey color is bet, and the green is the check. You can see it in the top right hand corner, the representation of the bet sizes and then the colors. So often you'll see like slightly different shades, and they're representing different bet sizes. But to know the best, it's like green is check and red/orange. I'm pretty colorblind. I don't know what you call that color. Is bet.
Sure. Yeah, I don't actually know what you call that color. I'm not colorblind, but I don't know what you call that color either. So, orangey brown, I guess.
Orangey brown.
So, all right, let's keep going. Yeah, overcall here is fine. I like the fold here, so it's good. I just wanted to kind of touch on that. I think that's good fold.
I'd pure call this because it's like if the stack in the big blind was like 30 bigs, I would just shove.
Sure. I'm fine with calling. I don't think it's a big problem. I'm fine with calling here as well. Fine with this.
This felt dicey just because obviously I can have Jack 10 that checks flop, but I don't have any 2 pairs in sets really. I can have Queen 9 suited sometimes, but I would 3-bet a lot pre. So I remember before you said, I'm just telling you my thought process. I remember at the time being like, I can get fucked pretty hard here with how my range works, and with the assumptions they make. They might think I don't have Jack 10, but I would have Jack 10 a lot, which I think protects it a little bit. But I just thought like this was somewhat dicey because I think the big blind's going to check raise pretty heavy on this turn.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, like, so as a result of that, are you checking this hand sometimes?
I think I should check it sometimes, yeah, but obviously bet it this.
Yeah, I think this hand's a mix. Like, it's difficult for me to know definitively, but I would assume that this hand is definitely not going to be pure bet. So I'd be surprised if we were to like solve this out and then they were to solve this out. Yeah,
and obviously for them reason, but like you agree that I shouldn't have like a small bet size here, right? Or do you think I should ever have a block size? Because I would never bet small on this turn if I do decide to open the action.
No, I don't think you should be betting like 10K.
Yeah, okay.
I don't see like how you'd value bet to that sizing. I don't think why that would make sense. So I agree with what you did.
I wasn't sure about this, and the reason I wasn't sure about this was obviously you can tell me, but I feel like I lead a lot of my all of my 5-6 on the turn, and I feel like I would check raise sometimes, but mostly lead them, and I think a lot of my heart draws would also lead, and then it's like this size, it's just my 7x that checks the turn, and maybe some 10x that is going for check raise on the turn, which I would do, but I just wasn't sure, even though I feel like my blockers look reasonable. I don't know if I have the hands, right? But then those hands probably fall into a bigger bet size anyway.
Okay, so I'm gonna see if I saw this one. I don't think I did. It doesn't look as familiar with me. For some reason, I might have skipped over this. What is this? Big blind versus cutoff. How many bigs? Blind versus cutoff. 60. And let me see. No, didn't solve it. Didn't think so. Okay. Okay, so how do I think about this? So first things first, let's talk about what you said. So what you said was you don't have any 5-6 or any flush draws. That's what stood out to me, because everything else you said was right, but that's wrong. So you should still be capable.
No, I didn't. I said I'm likely to lead them, but I would check raise 5-6 on the turn sometimes, and I also would have flush draws sometimes. I definitely have ace-high flush draws, and I'd probably have king-high flush draws a decent amount. Right?
You should have more than that. Yeah, you should be capable still of having like basically all of them. Like most of your, even like the low end flush draws should still be checking here sometimes.
Okay, I would lead them a lot. Like I would lean towards betting them, because I don't think people check 10-10-7 as much as they should, right? I think like, or even I'm not even sure they should be. Yeah, no, sorry. They should be betting 10-10-7. But if say this board was like 7-7-4, like I would attack the turn really heavily in a spot where they should have like overpairs and stuff. But I just don't think people do. Obviously, 10-10-7 is not a good example because they should bet it a lot. Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be attacking in both of those scenarios. Yeah. Also, I think that it's helpful to think about the other scenarios as attacking. But if you believe that they're capped, you would be attacking with also like the polarized component. Mm-hmm. So like the component that wasn't actually a flush draw, like the component that
just
was
one question. Pred in the chat, I would have all the suited Jack X. I would have every suited hand pretty much. I pretty much wouldn't fold a suited hand pre-flop. Like I don't think I'd fold a suited hand. Right? You don't fold a suited hand, yeah?
No. Yeah, you should have 100% of suited hands minus the ones that you 3-bet pre.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Oh yeah, all good. So yeah, so we should have 100% of suited hands minus the ones that we 3-bet pre-flop. So in this spot for turn play, it's important to have flush draws that check call that are just like flush draws. Like if you have like Jack 8 of hearts, you should just be like capable of check calling.
Okay, that makes sense, because you don't want to be on a river with no flushes, right? Obviously, it's a big issue.
Yeah, and it's like you're not going to just check raise them. You're not going to just check call them. You're not going to just show up with like ace king, ace high, and king high flush draws. Like you can just like it. It's tempting to bet, because like the way that we think, it's like, okay, if I bet, then he can fold, and if he calls, I can suck out. But like if you just think about it a little bit more mathematically, like if you check, he mostly checks. So when you check your Jack 8 of hearts or your 8-6 of hearts or whatever, like he's mostly going to check back. Mm-hmm. Because he checked back the flop, so he's not got a 10, he's capped, he's got all those vulnerabilities in his range, so he's probably going to check. If he does happen to bet, he's got a typically like a weaker hand, so your his bet sizing will typically not be huge, and you're going to be as long as his bet sizing is less than pot, like PSB or less, you're going to be getting more than 2-1, and you probably have 15 outs against like most of his range. And if you have 15 outs, then you just need 2 to 1 to call. That's it. So you're probably going to be getting the odds to just be able to check call some of your flush draws. And there's really no reason to like just strip them out when they can profitably check call, especially since you probably won't bet. So yeah, if you have a hand like Jack 8 of hearts, betting it's good, but checking it's not bad. And most people don't check it enough. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry.
No,
Sorry, just my fucking headphones are connected to, I don't even want to say it, but the thing that made the voice activated thing. Anyway, whatever. They just keep getting across me.
Okay, sure.
Blair Toast, the size and if he c-bets should probably be in general pretty small because he should c-bet this board pretty frequently. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. So anyway, so I think the bluff should feel more comfortable than it might have, but because you should have more strong hands than you probably do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes lots of sense.
Okay, so the pre-flop call's fine. Check back the flop is fine. Call the turns, very standard. And don't bet the river. Seems fine. Excuse me. So we open ace 10 off and check call the flop. It's PSB.
Yeah, this is obviously I'm not folding ace 10, but this feels kind of similar to the spot where I had king 9 earlier on. It's not the exact same, obviously, but where some of these hands like ace 10 isn't like, it becomes worse pretty quickly than like the jack X. But then I block his bluffs less with this hand, right? It's the only thing.
Yeah, so I would have been comfortable folding king 10 probably, but because like you meant, like you're basically alluding to the fact that jack 10 is probably a stronger call than ace 10 because your opponent's not value betting with the 10, so your kicker doesn't really matter. And then jack 10 just has more equity against a hand like king queen, for example. Yeah. So yeah, I would agree with that jack 10 is a stronger call. I would agree that jack 8 suited is probably a stronger call. 8-9 suited is a stronger call. 10-9 suited is a stronger call. So I wouldn't fold those either, where some people, like, they don't structure the thought process that way. They structure it more like kind of linearly, like a pair of 10s is better than a pair of 8s. So they end up playing poorly as a result. But I think that, like, you probably want to call here still with ace 10 and then like maybe fold king 10 sometimes, something along those lines.
It's
interesting when he bets a pot on the flop and then checks back the turn.
If he bet a different size on the flop, like if he bet like whatever 40% or something, I would feel confident when it goes check on a turn that my hand is good for a value bet. But the way I think about this spot is when he pots the flop, like he shouldn't pot worse than my hand for value. So like his range works in the sense that it's like random king X, like king jack, stuff like that. So I don't see a whole lot of hands that want to pop flop and then call any sort of bet on the river. So I was just check calling river, like I wasn't folding.
Okay, sure. I don't disagree with most of what you're getting here with. Like, I think that you still have to kind of evaluate what he does. And you want to think about, from my perspective, you want to think less about what he's doing and more about what you're doing. What he's doing is pretty ambiguous. So, like, it's kind of like an engineering idea. Like, you don't want to mix bad information with good information. Like, yes, to some degree, we have to try to handicap his range, but mostly we're doing that to try to make sure that his range is balanced. Like, we're trying... Mostly as when we're playing poker, we're trying to detect his range to the extent that we can say it's imbalanced in some way. So if his range is like massively overweight bluffs or like massively underweight bluffs, if we can't make that type of a judgment, his range is relevant because we want, in the sense that we try to prioritize certain hands over other hands and how we build our calling strategy. Like, there's no doubt about that. But your primary focus should be on you and your strategy, right? So against his bet size, how much of my range should I defend? And what does that look like? Again, in the context of what he's value betting. Or what you think he's value betting. But getting too hung up on him is, I think, mostly a mistake. So if we get into this spot, I don't think you want to bet. I agree with that. It seems very likely that the only way that he has a hand that's really capable of calling a bet is when he has a pair of 4s. I think that's like fairly likely that he has a pair of 4s. I think that when you check and he bets pot, he should have hands like ace 4. And to a lesser extent, if he's capable of flatting king 4 suited, he should have that too. I think that those are good ways to pot the flop. So I think he can show up with those hands, but I don't think there are really any other ways that he shows up with a hand worse than yours. I guess the same thing could, to a lesser extent, be true about a deuce. But I don't think there are any other ways that he pots the flop and calls the river. Like, not really. Maybe ace king, I guess.
I don't think people flat ace king there in game ever. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, that's true. So I think that I'm just trying to give him something. But
I understand.
Yeah, maybe ace jack is a better example. So I agree with checking. As far as whether or not to call, this hand is now probably worth more money than Jack 10 because it unblocks the bluffs better. This hand's probably worth more money than but like the reason it's going to be hard is, let's say if you check, what bet size are you anticipating? I would assume that you're probably anticipating PSP plus.
Yeah, big because like I'm pretty fucking capped when I just check off flop and then check turn and check river. Like I mean, I'm gonna have some queen X that play it like this for the exact same reasons that I don't think I get called. And if I don't turn any, like I don't make any 2 pairs on this run out, right? So like, well, against pot on the flop, if I had pocket 10s, would I raise? No, I don't think so on this board. Like I think I actually do still have some strong hands when I check river, just because I think it stands true. Maybe if I had the super strong parts of my range, I'd just try and bet small and try and get him to do something dumb a little bit more frequently. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think we're going to see a big bet. Like I think like he could even put us all in potentially if I check the river.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that you should expect to see like fairly large bets when you check the river. And in that context, how, like, you know, we have a video on, I'm not trying to plug too much, but like we have a video on BBZ.
The reason you're here, the whole fucking reason that you're doing this is so that you can get your fucking shit promoted, dude. BBZpoker.com. Tell me about the video. Let's go.
Yeah, okay. We have the introduction to quantitative. Thanks, buddy. So we have the introduction to quantitative strategies video that deals with like how to think about situations like this one.
Which lots of people, by the way, that have absolutely fucking loved, and it's $14, easy price point, great video, fucking get it. See in the chat, people like it. Anyway, let's go.
Okay. So if you, the video will explain how the math works. But if you bet pot, you're supposed to defend 50% of your range in this scenario. Okay. So if you bet 1.5x pot, you should defend 40. So now you have to think about what your range is. Okay. So we got to the river, and first we check all the flop. We define this hand as being close to the bottom because various principles around like Jack 10 and 10-9 and things. Now, we would show up to the river with those hands too. And this hand, again, probably ends up being better than those ones. But it's very difficult to show up with to the river, particularly after having checked with a bluff. And so the reason for that is because like if you have a hand like pocket 8s, you're probably going to call the flop, I guess. If you have a hand like pocket 10s, you're probably going to call the flop. If you have queens, you're probably going to call the flop. But when you get to the river and you have a hand like king jack, you're going to bluff. And to a lesser extent, like you should probably be capable of having hands like ace jack still that might have to, that probably has to bluff also, even though it's a little weird to bluff with. So, excuse me, ace king, same ideas where it's weird, but maybe you have to bluff with it just because you don't have enough hands to bluff with. And so like you build like a small betting range that takes your air out because of the fact that you check back the turn. So the fact that you check back the turn means like he's probably overweight some of the weaker parts of his range and not the stronger parts. So if you get here with a bluff, you do bluff, you get here with all your strong hands. So you have really strong hands to do that with, like pocket 8. So you do that with those, and that's it. So the part of that's like to some degree missing is stuff that might unblock some of his thinner value bets on the flop that would call the river. So a hand like pocket 8s is a good hand to maybe shove the river with. And then a hand like maybe king jack or something is another good hand to like shove the river with.
So what we're kind of getting at is that even though in my head that this was a check call, the reality is like if I'm calling 40% of my range, this probably doesn't fall into the top, and I'm going to be overcalling.
Well, it's not going to fall in at a 100% weight. I can tell you that. So if you check this river, and like basically when you check this river, what I'm telling you is you either have a pair of 8s, 10s, or queens. That's what's going to happen. And the pair of queens is going to block value bets. So because he can still have top pair and he can still value bet the river even to PSP or 1.5x pot with the queen. So the queen is going to be the most valuable blocker you can have because it blocks all of his value bets, right? So so we start with that like we're calling with the queen first. Then we move on to the fact that we're only calling 40% of our range, and all of our range is a pair of queens, 10s, and 8s. So we can't just call the pair of 10s and 8s all the time. It doesn't really matter which one it is because we'd end up calling too much because that's the only thing you have. So given that we're going to be folding something like 50 to 60% of the time, and we're going to fold no queens, we're going to be folding probably like something like 70 to 80% of the time when we have a 10 or an 8. This is one of the better 10s, so maybe you'd want to fold this one like half the time. But I just don't think you're going to be folding this 10 always. Or sorry, calling with this 10 always.
It makes a lot of sense when you break it down like that, and that's obviously like I know you don't want to overplug it, but that video, the introduction to quantitative thinking, like it breaks this down exactly. And I would strongly recommend getting it if you haven't already. A lot of people in the chat loved it, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense because in my head I was just like, I mean, when he pots flop, he's just not going to check the turn that much with his value, but like he can pot flop with hands like king queen and ace queen potentially, and potentially check turn and then really fuck me on the river. So it makes a lot of sense. And also you can have pocket 2s and pocket 4s that would pot flop sometimes, right? Potentially.
Yep.
But anyway, let's
I don't think you should Like you definitely want to call sometimes. Like that's the other thing to be careful about is like I'm definitely not advocating for pure folding. It's just like his bet should have some effectiveness to it basically, and you don't want to just make it so that particularly since you stream, like you don't want it to be public that like you would never fold to this spot, because then you should just never bluff. Because if you're never going to fold, you should just never bluff, because you always have a pair of tens, right? So you really should be folding like, you know, something that's tied to like the bet size that he's utilizing, so that he's incentivized to like kind of build a balanced range, not exploit you by just being heavy value.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's do one more hand, and then I'll let you get out of here.
All right, sounds good, man. Sounds good. Oh,
and I know when you do one more hand, it could last for 20 minutes, so this might get a little bit of bonus content.
Sure. So I can talk. I can ramble too. So this is an interesting spot because it's really fucking hard, in my opinion, for you. So we'll talk about this one and we'll call it here.
So what happened here?
This is flop. This is pretty standard.
Did I 3-bet pre-flop? So what happened?
Yeah, you 3-bet pre. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. Like at least fine-ish. So you see bet small, quarter pot. I'm good with it. Narrow SPR. The turn strategy gets pretty interesting. So you checked. What do you think about this spot?
I mean,
people are gonna hate
I think people are going to hate you.
People are going to hate my answer. They're going to hate my answer.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I feel like I could go all in as well and put pressure on like his pairs. But I also don't mind checking so that I have the nut flush on the river sometimes when it comes in. So I'm not 100% sure. I think it's an awkward spot with the stack to pot ratio the way it is. He's going to have pocket nines. He's going to have some traps pre-flop. I mean, but he's also going to have like 8, 7, 6s, and like we can pressure them a lot. Or else we could. But the only thing is, like, if I had a flush, I would never go all in, and if I had an overpair with a diamond, I would just bet small. So it might be. It feels unnatural to bet small turn, and then shove river. Like not unnatural, but it feels like we're like risking getting check shoved on. But at the end of the day, I think our range is like sufficiently protected that maybe I should just bet turn small and then go all in on the river. But I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah. Okay. So I would have double barreled. And I would have bet small, and if he jammed, I would actually fold. So like I don't think people really want to do that, but you do have to double barrel like a large fraction of these like ace of diamonds type hands. You get to stay away from them when like
you would have triple barreled though, right? Like if it was a 6 of hearts, right?
Yeah, I probably would have emptied. Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But if he like the thing is like when we bet the turn and I say I'm going to fold, like a lot of people won't want to fold. But the bottom line is when he jams, he doesn't actually have offsuit combos. So like because he flatted pre-flop. So we're actually like in a really bad way when he shoves the turn versus our double barrel, because this component is basically purely paired or suited. As soon as he calls here, it's like very hard to call with king queen. I guess he can have ace queen specifically, but like ace queen at 40 BB, like he can have ace queen, but like it's not
shoving the turn with ace queen and the queen of diamonds though, like very often.
So there, yeah. So and that's only one. It's only ace. It would be only ace queen. So like there are, and by the way, like we're fucked against ace queen, by the way. So there's, even if he has like the queen of diamonds. So there aren't any ways that like he can shove this turn against the barrel where we're like doing great. Like obviously like the spot that where it would suck is like when he has sevens with a diamond, but that's kind of it. And you're still not, I don't think, going to be getting, it's not going to be a big deal to fold. So that's kind of best case scenario, and it's not a big deal to fold. So I would have bet the turn and folded. I think that you should be checking when you should be thinking somewhat heavily about like having the jack of hearts. That probably sucks.
What's that? You're betting like 25, 35K, right? You're not going much.
Yeah, I'm betting like 35, something like that, something along those lines. Yeah. So okay, so he checks and we bet range, which we bet 80%, not range actually. So like, I mean, I should probably take a look at some of this, but for our purposes, we're betting a lot. And he calls, and turn was the 5 of diamonds. He checks, and so this is a little bit less than 30. This is 30%.
Are you checking as much as the bot is here with ace king? Because obviously that feels a little bit cleaner because he has ace queen, ace jack himself.
Yeah, I would check a lot with ace king personally. I would have checked a lot with that exact hand. Yeah, I would check probably closer to always though. Ace jack, ace of diamonds is a pretty high frequency bet. You can see that when you have the jack of hearts, that sucks.
Yeah.
So like you really don't want to be double barreling with the backdoor flush draw block there. It's not very helpful. And yeah, so like ace of diamonds, it's a pretty high frequency bet. And if we do bet, we'll see what happens when we get jammed on. Yeah, it just folds. So I would have bet, and then like it's kind of shitty, but that's what I would have done. So All right.
What did I do on the river? Did I go all in?
I think you folded. Oh, you checked back the turn. That's right. You checked back the turn and then you jammed the river. And then you folded. Yeah.
All right, sweet. Jordan, thank you very much. That was very enjoyable. And I don't think, I think you could have been meaner to me in a few spots. Telling me that you play.
You always say that, though. You always say that. You play good, so it's easy. Easy to be nice.
If people want to find you, they can find you on Twitch. I'm just going to get in the chat and then everyone can click on it. I think that's the best way to do it. But is there anything else? You obviously have BBZPoker.com where they can find all your video content. Where else can I find you? Fucking sell out for like 20 seconds, would you? That was a great session and people love it when you come on. So fucking pitch your shit. Come on.
All right. So yes, we've got BBZPoker.com. We've got the videos there. The Introduction to Quantitative Strategies video is probably most relevant for everybody that's here. We've got an ICM course as well that you can check out. We've got the YouTube channel, BBZ Poker. We upload the highlights from the Twitch stream, and I occasionally make videos there as well. We try to upload like once every couple of days, so I definitely check that out. We're posting on Instagram. But like I would say the biggest channels to kind of be a part of are like twitch.tv/BigBluffsInc, and then the YouTube channel, and then again the website bbzpoker.com.
And also on top of all that, at some point in the not so distant future, myself and Jordan are going to go over the rest of this hand history, and we are going to release it as a video, which will be available on bbzpoker.com. But Jordan has also told me that he's going to give me a bunch of copies, which he'll be giving out on my stream, and will be giving out on my stream as well. So
correct.
Keep an eye out for that. And Jordan, I really appreciate it. You're a top lad.
That was awesome, man. I appreciate it. I love the invitation. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Everyone say thank you to Jordan so he comes back again sometime.
Cheers.
Right, cheers.
Yeah, bye, buddy.